but it is a very privileged label, right, to be able to say that you're feminist, right?
No, I do not consider it a privilege to be called a feminist. I actually have a visceral reaction when someone calls me a feminist. They're only doing that because the left has made people think that only sane women are feminists. The left has made people think that if you're a woman and you're not a feminist, then it means you don't want yourself to have rights. That is a lie. I have human rights just as much as the next person, but I am not a feminist. So no, it is absolutely not a fucking privilege to be labeled a feminist.
And I say that because I come from a working class background of Dominican immigrant parents. My mother would not necessarily identify as a feminist. I look to my mother, and I do think of her as a feminist. A lot of my ideas and my empowerment comes from seeing her like survive and put food on the table. When I'm thinking about feminism, I'm always thinking about who's not part of the conversation. What are the barriers? How do we think about equity? How do we think about self-empowerment and agency and having a voice, right? And having choice, and thinking about our basic human rights, education, access to health, homes, like having bread, having food, and those things are very important, right? And they're at the crux, right?
Education, access to health, homes, and food are not rights. I know this may piss some of you off, but the truth is that these things are privileges. It is a privilege to have an education. It is a privilege to have health care. It is a privilege to have a home. It is a privilege to have food. That might be surprising to you, considering we need food to survive. No one, however, is obligated to give us food, except maybe a parent has to give their child food. We should find food so we don't die, but it is not something we are entitled to have, which is what a right is. Human rights are not violated if we feel hungry. But human rights are violated if someone tries to stab us. Do you see the difference? Rights are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. We are all entitled to these three things. Everything else is a privilege. In America, we are taking education, healthcare, homes, and food for granted, and that's why some people have forgotten that these things are privileges. We are a privileged country as a whole. I'm not saying everyone's life is perfect in America, but everyone has the opportunity to get these four things in America. You can go to school, read books, or watch videos to learn things. You can call 911 when you need help because you've been injured or when you feel like you need protection from something dangerous. We have shelters for people, soup kitchens for the unfortunate. We have grocery stores and restaurants for people, so most people can get food somehow. Those systems are not perfect, but we have them. There are plenty of countries who would not hesitate to shoot you like a dog in the street if you were looked at as a burden to them. In America, doing that would be a criminal offense.
Of what a lot of us here know that we need. It's like there are the barriers, right, that we constantly ignore that are very much systemic and microaggressive, right? We see them and experience them every day.
Like what in the U.S.?
So,
like what?
What would you like to know an example of?
I know you said that there's like barriers. I want to know what barriers in the U.S. today as a woman.
Well, as a woman or as a woman of color? Let's be specific.
As a woman. I said as a woman.
Well, no, I can't answer as a woman.
I
I'm just
feel
not
like
a woman.
Here's a leftist tactic I'm going to point out. Omaris claims there are barriers. Pearl asks a simple, precise question, like what? Omaris answers with a question, which is a deflection. Pearl asks again, what barriers in the U.S. today as a woman? Omaris answers with another question, which is another deflection. Pearl says again, as a woman. Omaris finally says, I can't answer as a woman. Are you not a woman, Omaris? Omeris deflected Pearl 3 times and then finally says she cannot answer. If there were so many alleged barriers as these feminists claim, why can't they specify any of them? Why wouldn't they want to answer specifically? Omeris keeps talking about specificity when she's deflecting Pearl, yet she never says anything specific. Just because you say the word specify doesn't mean that you're being specific. There are no barriers because you can't answer the question, and Pearl just dismantled your entire claim with a simple question. If there were so many difficult barriers and hardships facing women, and the feminists actually gave a damn about women, they would be quick to list off what the problems were, wouldn't they? If you asked me what barriers existed for me to become a feminist, I would say feminists lie, spew hatred, act like a supremacist movement, promote hive mind thinking, demand that I do, say, and act how they want, are defensive, shrill, and annoying. I want none of those things, so I will never be a feminist. If something was such a big problem for you, you would have answers. Feminists are a big problem for me, so I have answers. The fact that Omeris has 0 answers shows me she is just spewing feminist propaganda. She's been told to say females have barriers, but she's not been told what else to say after that, which is why she could not answer Pearl's question.
Question is kind of hostile when you're like, there are no barriers to what I want. Congratulations. That means you have a privilege where you're not facing any friction, and that's showing, and I feel like it's
I think as an American, you're very privileged.
I'm not ignoring that.
Do you see how you are ignoring the fact that we have American privilege, though, Mindy? When Pearl asked Omeris what barriers there are, neither her nor you can answer. You're mad at Pearl, and then you tell her she's being mean because she has no barriers, and then you throw privilege in her face. When Pearl says that we as Americans have plenty of privilege, you claim you're not ignoring that? You are. If you weren't, you'd agree with Pearl that there aren't any barriers designed especially for women. If you really had barriers, why don't you tell Pearl what they are so that you guys can talk about it? Isn't this panel for talking about issues that are affecting women? Isn't that what this is about? Or have we found out that this is not what this is really about? What is this really about then? Dogpiling on Pearl, that's what this is about. Burying facts, that's what this is about. Pearl busted your narrative barely 10 minutes into the Vice panel, and you have to squash her. This is what Vice does. Vice invites people to their fake panels under the presumption that they're going to have a discussion. But what they really want is for the leftists to dogpile onto the conservatives. That's what they want. They want divisiveness and screaming and this unproductive bullshit.
We're at like a basic level of what, the feminist movement is when it comes to just being born a woman, right? Physically, pound for pound, we are born as women and we have less lean muscle mass than men. So there are issues of violence and assault and stuff like that. And so therefore, there are policies, there are things to help women physically, like, for example, I believe being able to carry a firearm and being able to use that safely to defend yourself against men who are born naturally with more muscle mass than a woman.
I hate it when feminists imply that men are inherently violent and that they want to be violent to women. When the hell did everyone forget about chivalry? Men holding doors open for women, pulling their chairs out for women before they sat down at restaurants, opening car doors for women, carrying women's bags for them, overall protecting and respecting women. A man has a desire to protect. That's what I think of when I think of men. When feminists think of men, though, they think all men are like serial killers and mafia bosses or something. Feminists act like men just exist to beat women up. What is that? What kind of fucked up thoughts are these? That's another reason I don't want to be labeled a feminist. I also have a newsflash for everyone. Both men and women can be violent. Ever heard of Amber Heard? She abused her boyfriend, Johnny Depp. Both men and women can be abusive fucks if they choose to. Yeah, that's right, it's a choice. It's a choice to decide that you will hit your spouse because you feel like it. But it's also a choice to say, nope, no, I refuse to hit my spouse because guess what? Hitting someone you love is wrong. So spare me the men are inherently violent garbage propaganda, okay, feminists? However, the second point that Antonia made does make sense. She says guns are an advantage for someone who is smaller than someone else. She is correct that a gun will give you the ability to defend yourself, and if you know where to aim, you should be able to dispatch your enemy without too much trouble. This is precisely the reason we created weapons at all. Bigger people have an advantage when it comes to overpowering someone smaller than them in hand-to-hand combat, even between people of the same sex. There are smaller men who will get creamed by a bigger man if he punches them in the face, and if the smaller man had a gun, he would have a better chance of defending himself than if he had no weapon. The same goes for a woman shooting a man.
I keep hearing the term equity. What would a world that has equity look like? Like, would it be 50% of everyone in the same jobs? Would it be like prison, 50%?
That's equality.
50%.
Yeah,
So what does equity look like?
So equity is generally described as a state of fairness because historically a lot of people have been arguing for equality, but what does that give us? Like 0.5 of the 1% being women, this doesn't really do anything for us. And so people have talked about equity instead, which is instead of sameness, it's fairness. And this would mean that we remove systemic barriers to engage in society, not just for women, but also for everyone.
So which barriers?
Those
Okay,
barriers that you
so-
don't believe in.
What? Those barriers that you don't believe in. If Pearl asks you what barriers, just fucking answer her with what barriers there are. Also, how is Pearl supposed to believe in something that you won't even describe to her? I still maintain that there are no barriers. These leftists can't admit that, so they're never going to answer.
What does it do
Go
for
on.
you to have a bunch of ramps in your life? It doesn't do shit. I need those ramps, right?
Can we stick to male versus female? That's my question. So I'm thinking male versus female.
But my
So
feminism includes ability, it includes
but my
race.
question is
You
for
guys
women.
can talk.
For women
You can
versus men. Like what barriers do we need removed? Because that's my statement. I'm not stating anything else. I'm stating women versus men.
It's very silly.
I still don't know what the hell these feminists mean by the term feminism because none of them have given a cohesive definition of it. Mindy just said, my feminism includes ability, it includes race. That's not a definition. It would be like if I said, my car includes wheels and seat belts. That doesn't define what a car is. That is just me listing off what is part of my car. Mindy's listing off what is part of her feminism, which is pointless. I'm going to go off on a limb here and say one definition of feminism could be barriers that men put in place to make women's lives harder. Again, not what I believe, but maybe this is what Pearl means when she asks about barriers between men versus women. Pearl says, I'm stating women versus men. Eli says something very strange. It's very silly. If feminism is about men versus women, why is Pearl's statement silly? Is it silly because feminism is not about men versus women, Eli? You know what is actually silly. You being a man on a feminist panel.
Like so what barrier?
Why is
I
it
just
silly?
want
The
to.
question
It's a
is
fair
silly.
question.
So,
Yes.
yeah, but I'm
It's
saying,
not a fair question, it's
how is it not a
hostile.
fair question?
Kind of proving the point of what people, especially black women, other people who are anybody who's not white, why we hear feminism and we don't want that label because it means, I'm just gonna say, it means that. Like, it means that you've already gotten to a pinnacle of whatever you think your happiness needs or whatever your survivalist needs are, when there are people on lower end who are trying to survive, who are trying to get to a point of what should be normal, based on what other people have.
I don't want the feminist label because it is garbage. It's a fucking group of people that just scream incessantly at each other about nothing. I don't know what this conversation is about. Pearl is asking a simple fucking question that is fair, not silly, not hostile, and none of these leftists want to answer it. Just say you don't want to answer it. I'm white and I don't want the label feminism. Feminism is an annoying piece of garbage. Also, Antonia, with your jewelry and your necklace and your fancy dress? You don't think you have your survivalist needs met? You're sitting in a studio in New York on TV, really, right now?
Sort of sounds like you're saying feminism is not always inclusive then.
Right. It's most of the time it's not inclusive. It's more times than not, it's not. So, and within the just feminism space, again, there obviously the very basic is male versus female versus, but unfortunately, we've only had one subset of women be the face and voice and the academics and research and everything to be able to say, well, that's the standard we need to be in, when there are other people who are still trying to get to some type of normalcy and just living.
Antonia continues talking, and I continue not knowing what the hell she's talking about. The moderator manages to interpret Antonia's gibberish into something about feminism not always being inclusive. The leftist obsession with everything being inclusive drives me up a wall. What is it with the people that want to be included in the feminist label? It's an ideology, so if you want to be included in it, just think that way, and then you're magically included. That's how having thoughts about something works, isn't it? If you don't want to have a certain mentality, then don't think that way. If you want a certain mentality, then do think that way. What do the feminists mean when they say someone isn't included? It's not like feminism is a building and you're not allowed inside because you don't have the key. Also, there is something called the Combahee River Collective, which was a feminist document written by Black feminists. I am also fairly sure the founder of Black Lives Matter was a Black feminist too. Patrisse Cullors cites Black feminists Audre Lorde, Bell Hooks, and Angela Davis as inspiration for her movement. Patrisse has a very prominent place as the face of a movement. You're telling me you don't know who Patrisse Cullors is, Antonia? Because you don't think that Black feminists are included in feminism? What the hell are you talking about?
What is the biggest issue then that feminism faces?
The biggest issue that feminism faces is that feminists cannot define the word feminism.
I think it's the mindset. Women taking the agency, women taking initiative. I think it's mindset holding them back a lot, because if you want to be in a competitive world and compete, you have to have the right mindset. And I think a lot of people blame their lack of confidence or what society tells them for the reason they're not achieving what they need to achieve, when that's not the case. You have to have the mindset of achieving, because the men who built the world had the mindset of building it. So the women who want to engage and build that further, they need to have that same mindset.
I don't think we do. I think that's like assuming that we all want to be capitalist babies.
Right.
Capitalist babies is a very strange phrase. If I were going to choose a government style to compare to babies, it would probably be socialism. Socialism is a political philosophy and movement encompassing a range of economic and social systems which are characterized by social ownership of the means of production as opposed to private ownership. One comparison between socialism and babies is the lack of ownership. In socialism, the community owns things instead of the individual. Everything is shared between the community. Think of a hippie commune. Now, think of this in a bigger picture context. The government of a socialist country will redistribute the resources of the country amongst all of the citizens. I would compare socialism to babies, because in the case of the baby, the parents have to provide everything for the baby, because the baby doesn't know any better and is helpless to the whims of the outside world. In socialism, Big Daddy government gives you money, housing, education, food, and you are just the helpless citizen baby living off the meager stipend the government gives you. That's the concept of universal basic income. The government wants to give citizens a payment for no services rendered. The problem with this type of lifestyle is that it breeds laziness, entitlement, and dissatisfaction. As much as we complain about the truth that work is annoying, work is still satisfying. That's why when you have too much time off and you have nothing to do, you get bored. Think of this in the context of a school group project. The teacher assigns a project, and the incentive is to do well on the project so you can get an overall good grade. In the group, there's always a student who is lazy and doesn't want to put effort in. In the group, there's also one or two who are good students and want to do the best on the project. In a class where the grade of that project is weighed based on who did the most work, the 2 good students would get a good grade on the project and the bad student would get a lower grade. That would be fair. That would be the capitalist way to look at the project. Put effort in, succeed, and get rewarded. Put no effort in, fail, and don't get rewarded. If we turn the grading of the project into a socialist system, this is what would happen. The 3 students would all get the same grade, even if the 2 good students did all the work. The good students' grades might be lower than in the first scenario, because the grade had been redistributed to the bad student as well. The bad student's grade would be higher than in the first scenario, but that grade would have been handed to that student because they did no work. That would be entirely unfair. Socialism poses as fairness when it says, well, we'll redistribute the wealth to everyone, so everyone will get their fair share. The appearance of fairness, with everything being distributed equally among the citizens, erases genuine fairness. Genuine fairness is when someone is allowed to put effort into changing the events of their own life, and then depending on the choices they make, their life will turn out a certain way. Capitalism seems more comparable to adults in my mind. Businesses are created, some of them succeed and some of them fail. When the businesses fail, they pick themselves up and start a different business, learning from the mistakes of their failure. That seems like a very adult way to live, rather than having Big Daddy government give you socialist babies all the things you think you are entitled to in life.
I think that men are not well adjusted in the society and women are not trying to re-embody what they have built for us. I think that what we're forgetting is a very important detail, which is just human respect and dignity.
I find it comical that a feminist is claiming that another group of people are not well adjusted. Have you seen the panel so far? We are 13 minutes in, and I don't think this panel has had any significant healthy discussion at all. All we've seen is complaining anytime someone asks a question that someone else doesn't want to answer, followed up by dogpiling and defensive, shrill, angry comments. Have you met feminists? They scream in the streets, at seminars and lectures, in their cars, and in general everywhere they go. Feminists even scream in their own houses about other women's life choices, just because those women aren't living life the way the feminist wants them to. But according to Yelda, men are the ones who are not well adjusted in society. Really right now? Classic projection. Remember that Yelda is the one who says,
I think that what we're forgetting is a very important detail, which is just human respect and dignity.
really, Yelda? So how you just respected men and talked so much about their dignity right now?
Yeah, that's...
And not asking people to prove what their experience is and to prove to you. It is such conservative thinking to say I don't understand, explain it to me, versus just saying I don't understand and let me respect what you are saying.
Apparently, it's conservative thinking to not understand what something is and to need someone to explain it to you. According to that, everyone is a conservative. We have all had points in our lives where there was something we didn't understand and we had to have someone explain it to us. I don't think Yelda thought that one through very well, because I have a feeling she would be very offended to hear that she herself had at one time, by her own logic, thought like a conservative. I'm sure at some point Yelda has had to have something explained to her, as we all have, because that's part of learning. We are human beings. We have the capacity for learning. And in order to learn, things need to be explained. It's insane to me that Yelda is trying to politicize our human capacity of higher brain function. Yelda says that if you don't understand something, you should just respect it anyway. This is also insane. Respect requires admiration. Respect comes when a person does something admirable or inspirational or has qualities that can be admired. Leftists think respect can be demanded. They think they can say, hey, you, respect me. And we're supposed to just respect them. but that's not how respect works at all. That actually causes people to disrespect you. Thoughts that I don't understand are not entitled to my respect. It doesn't mean I have to be mean to those people I don't understand. It might mean I would ask them a question in an attempt to understand them. Yelda's presenting a circular argument when she says that if you don't understand someone, you aren't allowed to ask them what they mean, so then the person will never be understood. She wants everyone to not understand everyone else because she has forbidden us from asking questions. That's tyrannical, which is another reason why I don't respect people who act like this. Tyrants do not deserve my respect because the people whom I least admire and find the most uninspirational are tyrants.
Respecting wherever your starting point, I'm respecting that. I'm really respecting that. I'm saying that if you don't have the mindset you can even achieve it, you're never going to even try. So it's never.
Achieve what? Like, what are we talking about? Because I feel like you've projected this like capitalist ideology on every woman.
Achieve whatever it is you're looking for, equality, equity. But what I'm saying is women in the feminist space and a lot of these other spaces, we don't acknowledge that we have to take the initiative. We have to take the action. We have to have the mindset. We have to demand those things.
I don't understand how we're getting so off topic. This is about feminism today, whereas everybody wants to make this about their individual, here are all the multitude of other things that factor into my person. Great. This is about feminism. It's about womanhood. I understand that all of you have your own individual experiences and the other things that feed into you as a person. That's perfectly fine. But this is where intersectionality falls off the planet and loses, I would argue, probably the vast majority of people, including me. I'm not even a feminist. I don't give a crap about feminists arguing amongst themselves about who's the most victimized. But this is annoying to listen to. I honestly I don't understand anything anybody's even trying to get at.
Sydney just encapsulated exactly how I feel about this crazy, completely useless panel.
Look, I just want to say that I don't think equity and this concept of competition can't coexist with each other. Equity is building more facilities for people who need them. It is recognizing that there are holes in the market and there's opportunities for women and feminine, expansive people and meeting those opportunities. I think equity can buoy the pre-existing system that we live in a good way.
And this is where we're going to get to what I think the real feminist arguments are based off of policy. And abortion is the biggest one.
How many of you would identify as pro-choice? Let's do a show of hands for pro-choice.
I feel like pro-choice is pro-life, though.
Yeah.
Okay, and folks who identify as pro-life? Why do you identify as each?
I've heard this before from pro-choice people that pro-choice is pro-life. My best guess as to what pro-choice people mean by this statement is that they're pro-life because they value the mom's life. This shows pro-choice people think only the mom's life matters because the mom's life is counted as a life, but the baby isn't even counted as human, so it doesn't have a life to uphold. I know pro-choice people think pro-life people think only the baby matters, but that's where they're wrong. Pro-life people think both the mother's life and the baby's life matter. Leftists often think that the right thinks exactly the same way they do, just about the opposite topic. The left thinks only one life matters, so they think the right also thinks only one life matters, but they're wrong. The left thinks only one life matters, but the right thinks both lives matter. I decided to do a test. When the moderator polls the room to see who is pro-life and pro-choice, I paused the video. Then I did some statistical calculations. I counted the total number of people in the panel minus the moderator, counted how many hands were raised for pro-choice, and counted how many hands were raised for pro-life. My calculations yielded a very interesting result. The left often tells us that the majority of Americans are pro-choice, that almost everyone except for the crazy, radical, right-wing, extremist psychopaths are pro-life. Here's the percentage breakdown of this vice panel. There's actually a higher percentage of pro-life people. This contradicts everything the left tells us. I realize this is a very small portion size of Americans being polled, but it shows that the left's certainty of how many Americans are pro-choice doesn't seem to be as concrete as they like to pretend it is.
You've gone from legal, safe, rare to, yeah, I'm so proud, let me beatbox in front of the Planned Parenthood, yeah, I got murder on my mind. The fact that it's celebrated that murdering children, especially in late-term pregnancies, is celebrated, that people are so proud of themselves for mutilating a fetus is just, it blows my mind. And I don't think that you need to be pro-life to even take that stand.
You said late-term pregnancy.
Yes.
A lot of abortions do not happen
I made
in
the
late-term
distinction.
pregnancy.
I made the distinction
Right.
specifically because
Right.
lots of people still celebrate. There are people who, when the laws were passed actually here in New York, they said, yes, great, yes, I love the fact
but
that...
you need to ask about what are people celebrating, right? They're celebrating access.
Well,
We're not
well, that's
celebrating
okay.
killing kids. Like, that's
But
not what
then
it
why-
is.
Sydney's trying to talk, and Omaris is getting defensive. Now, why is Omaris getting defensive? Is Omaris defensive because she wants to stop Sydney from saying true things? The pro-choice side loves to make people think abortion is only about a woman's choice not to be a mom. They always forget that the woman's choice started before she got pregnant. It's like pro-choice people think that every woman has been forced to get pregnant. This isn't The Handmaid's Tale, leftists. Women have the choice whether to be a mother long before they get pregnant, okay? Stop being crazy. Sydney mentions late-term pregnancies, and Omaris says late-term pregnancies are rare. Sydney says people still celebrate, and Omaris is like, well, but they're not celebrating killing kids, they're celebrating having access. Okay, if I don't celebrate the death of someone, but I celebrate the access to the hitman who killed that someone, what am I actually celebrating? Isn't the result the same? It doesn't matter if you're not celebrating the death of the baby. If you celebrate the access to the abortion clinic, you're indirectly celebrating the death of the baby. You can say you're not celebrating it all you want, but you are.
Well, so this is what I'm saying.
So, like, here's the thing. When we're talking about access to reproductive health and to abortion rights, right, and to being pro-choice, listen, that's your body, you do you.
The child
If
is
you
not your
decide-
body.
A zygote.
A baby.
I can't believe I have to explain this, but apparently I do. The baby is inside the woman's body. The baby got in there because it was created through sex. The baby grows its own body inside the mother's body. The baby will become a different human being once its cells develop inside the mother's body. The baby is not part of the woman's body. Having something inside your body does not make that thing part of your body. If you eat pizza and it goes into your body, the pizza does not become part of your body. Yes, nutrients and vitamins from the pizza get extracted by your digestive system and you get the benefits of those, but you do not turn into a piece of pizza. Jesus Christ. You remain a human being. So once again, having something inside your body doesn't make it part of your body. It just means there is something inside your body. Can we understand this? More importantly, how did we forget this? Cavemen knew this. What the fuck is wrong with us? A zygote is the cell that is formed when a sperm fertilizes an egg. The egg is a human cell that implants itself in the uterus and starts growing. It grows into an embryo, then a fetus, then a fully formed baby. The egg is a human egg, which means the embryo is a human embryo, the fetus is a human fetus, and the baby is a human baby. The zygote is a human zygote. The zygote is the first building block of human life. Simply saying it's not a baby, it's a zygote, is accurate for the detailed medical terminology of the life stage, but it is not accurate to claim that a zygote is not a human being. Fully formed human beings are, of course, called something different, but at its core, both a zygote and an adult are human beings. This flippant way of saying, psh, it's just a zygote, and implying it doesn't matter is like saying a seed for a plant is not that plant. It's like saying an avocado pit is not important because full-grown avocados are the only thing that matters. Well, if you never plant the avocado pit, you'll never get new avocados. Just as if you never create a zygote, you'll never get new humans. This is such simple logic to me that it confuses me why this concept confuses so many people.
It's so scary for me to hear people calling like guns the biggest equalizer for women, but taking their choices away from them at a policy level.
Why is that?
Having a gun is an equalizer.
It is.
Having rights is an equalizer.
Yeah, that's
Having
right.
choice is
Right.
an equalizer.
Just like
We have choice, Yelda. We have the choice to have protected sex so that if we don't want kids, we won't have to have kids. That is the choice, okay? Get it through your head.
gun rights.
And in this country,
41 forms
the
of birth
policies
control.
that are pushed
41.
to continue perpetuating patriarchy and anti-women, like taking the autonomy away from women, it is heartbreaking to see women pushing that propaganda. It's all brainwash. Like you,
Oh,
it
it's
is-
brainwash because you don't agree with me,
No,
so
because
therefore
I've been
I'm
brainwashed.
brainwashed.
I have lived deeply institutionalized.
Ma'am,
I have lived under Islam.
I'm not interested in any of that. Like, there's no like
You're not
guilt
interested
for
in
me.
human-
No, I'm not interested in like
living.
thinking that like women are doing this really bad thing. Like in my
is.
religion, abortion is actually allowed. If the woman needs it, she's allowed because, you know, it's very interesting how like fundamental America is. Like fundamentalist.
This is nothing to
very,
do with
very, like,
even
deep
religion. This is very
conservative
basic.
thinking.
Yeah, we get it, Yelda. You hate conservatism, you hate America, you hate capitalism. What is your point? Just to sit here and complain?
Scientific human rights.
We're also talking about people not having access to abortion clinics where they're doing the things themselves and they die, right? We're also talking about women in the hospital who are pregnant, who have chosen to stay with their pregnancy and have issues at hospitals, and hospitals that are like, oh no, we don't do that.
For one, it is not a requirement to stick a hanger up your coochie if you're pregnant. For two, you don't have to raise the child if you don't want to. America has adoption services and safe haven services. You can sign your parental rights away and the baby will get adopted by couples who really want babies. Babies get adopted faster than children who are older. Doctors who are too afraid to help a woman because they think they'll be performing an abortion are being stupid. What did you go to medical school for? You don't know the difference between when you're ending a life on purpose and when something went wrong in the process of saving a life? Should I trust you as a doctor? If a woman is having some complication with her pregnancy and the baby is causing her distress, deliver the baby to relieve the stress on the mother. Tend to the baby and the mother. If the baby happens to die because it's too premature, that's not an abortion. That is a natural death despite doctors trying to save a life. An abortion is the termination of a pregnancy. What's a pregnancy? A baby growing inside a mother. So if you stop the baby from growing through chemicals or extraction, that's an abortion. If you're trying to save the baby by taking it out of the mother and then putting it in the NICU, that's not an abortion. Okay? Not complicated. I didn't go to medical school. Why do I know this? Stop making it complicated. Another way doctors should help is to remove a fertilized egg that has implanted itself in the wrong spot. This is also not an abortion. Sometimes things in our bodies go in the wrong spot and they have to be removed. A baby cannot grow in a fallopian tube. That is not going to go well for either the baby or the mother. So the egg needs to be taken out so the mother can keep her tube intact. It is unfortunate that the egg didn't implant in the right spot, but this is not an intentional killing of a baby. So please, doctors, stop thinking you cannot fix an ectopic pregnancy, okay?
Listen, For whatever reason, you don't need to explain it to anybody, but a lot of times when we're talking about access to reproductive health, for me, I'm thinking about Black, Indigenous, people of color, particularly women and girls who are working class, who do not have even access to like proper sexual education.
I don't understand what the leftist obsession is with having outside sources teach their kids things. Are leftists lazy and they don't want to do their parenting responsibilities? Maybe leftists think they're not qualified and they need experts to teach their kids things. That's a lie. If you're a parent, you are the expert your kid looks up to. That's your responsibility now. People should get their sexual education from their parents. It's the most proper environment to learn about something that personal. There used to be a time when almost all parents would recoil if a stranger tried to talk to their kids about inappropriate things. And now parents are expected to drop their kids off at school and be happy that the teacher is talking to their kids about inappropriate things. That's insane. Parents are supposed to be teaching the kid about life. Sex is part of life, so once the kid gets to puberty and is starting to show interest in sex, that's when the parents should teach them about it.
It's the oppressive state of saying, I will force you to have a child even against your own will, right? Especially when you're thinking about women and girls who would be forced to have these children who are already living in very traumatized and scarce situations. You wanna ask about barriers? That's a barrier right there.
Really, Omaris? Now you're able to utter a barrier out loud. When Pearl asked you earlier what barriers there are, you asked her 14 different questions instead of answering her. Why did you do that when you had this supposed barrier hidden up your sleeve? Did you do that because Pearl's not currently asking you the question? Is that how this works? You answer questions that no one is asking, but when somebody asks questions, you don't answer them?
Women in poverty aren't able to access the way that rich women are, and no matter what happens, rich women are gonna keep getting abortions, and people in poverty are gonna not. And the choice, opening it up, the overruling is marginally affecting people of color, people in poverty, way more than people who are gonna get access to those abortions.
Actually,
anyway.
incorrect. You're the misquote. There's actually more abortions for people in poverty. It's just at a lower rate.
Why do you think that abortion has been so tied up in this feminism conversation?
It's because in the 1960s, the feminists marched, rallied, and lobbied for abortion on demand. They made it part of the feminist movement. Once again, feminists don't even know their own history of the thing they claim to be so passionate about.
It's all just social structure set up around bodies. So if not all women are able to have babies, but it's about the barriers and value that we give to these specific bodies, right? And so if abortion happens in a woman's body, that's why this conversation is coming up.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
You said that not all women are able to have babies or pregnancies. Are you saying, meaning like an infertility issue?
A number of reasons. There's all kinds of reasons that not all women are having babies.
Mindy apparently doesn't know how to answer questions either. Antonia asks, are you saying meaning like an infertility issue? Mindy replies, a number of reasons. That's not an answer. It's like if someone asked me, do you have this specific item in the store? And I replied with, we have a number of items in the store. That's not an answer. I have not answered that person's question about the specific thing they were asking about. Maybe Mindy doesn't mean infertility issue, but she doesn't want to say that, so she deflects it. Great conversation, guys.
Pearl, I saw your hand up. Yeah.
I think women want to sleep around and not have any consequence for it.
Hell yeah, we do.
Yeah, instead of, taking personal accountability and being on birth control, they just want to do whatever they want.
You say this like it's a bad thing.
Yeah.
Eli the man says, hell yeah, we do. I guess the stereotype of man that wants to sleep around is true for Eli. Oh, we figured out why he's pretending to be a woman now, so he can sleep with women. Mindy excitedly screams, yeah! I guess the feminists just admitted they want to be whores? Eli says, you say this like it's a bad thing. Of course, Eli would say this because he's a dude and he probably enjoys sleeping around with no consequences. If the women also don't care about consequences, it takes Eli off the hook for responsibility.
It almost sounds like you said.
Can I also ask, do you have any care to empower women, or is disempowering women part of your, like, steez?
So judgmental, Yelda. Yelda thinks that being against sleeping with random strangers makes you someone who doesn't care to empower women. I am not going to lie, I have no idea what empower means from the leftist context. In Yelda's sentence, it makes no sense to me. I don't think sleeping with strangers gives me any power. I don't feel powerful sleeping with strangers. Yelda also says stees at the end of her sentence. I'm pretty sure stees is not a word. I checked Google and it is not a word in the regular dictionary. There were 2 entries for stees in the Urban Dictionary, but even then only 2 means it's not really a word. However, for your entertainment, here's what the Urban Dictionary says. Stees is a verb that means when a naked man pees sitting down. The second definition is a man that has no competency in anything he does. He's a bust with the ladies and cannot do anything on his own. Some may say lame, lazy, or worthless. Basically, stees doesn't fucking mean anything and Yelda's just speaking gibberish.
To see this as shame, insult, guilt, need to be right, okay. Why is it empowering to sleep around?
No,
Why is
what
that
I'm
empowering?
saying is, like, I feel like you do, like, take, like, the way you speak on women is very sort of like, women just don't want to do this. Women just don't have this. Women just want to this.
Maybe I should
and I
change my
wonder
term.
why
Maybe I
you
should
have
say-
so much, like, hatred towards women.
I don't hate
Where
women.
does that root in? It
I don't
sounds
hate
like
women.
you do.
You know what, Yelda? There are some things women don't want to do. I don't want to be a garbage man. Riding on the back of a garbage truck doesn't sound appealing to me. I'm pretty sure a lot of other women wouldn't want to do that either. Would you want to do that, Yelda? No? Pearl is telling the truth when she says women don't want to do certain things. But guess what? Men don't want to do certain things either. It's called free will. Are you telling me you're upset that women have the free will to choose what they do and don't want to do?
I am a woman. I
doesn't mean you don't have
I could be
self-hate.
black and still be internalized racism.
Exactly.
Yeah,
I'm saying
her.
specific things that you're saying, like women don't want to work, women don't want to this, women want to sleep around. Where did you learn these belief systems from?
Because, okay, the question was, why does abortion keep getting brought up? 40% of women that have had abortions have had 2 or more. 40%.
Good for
so,
them.
So what does that say to me? That means you're using it as a form of birth control. And they don't track the 60%.
What kind of abortions?
Can you let me finish? They don't track the 60% to say who in the future has abortion. So to me, it's like, why are they dying so hard for abortion? They want to sleep around with no consequences, even though you have 41 forms of birth control.
Who does that benefit? I don't think that benefits women. I think actually that benefits men because it means that men can have sex with you without consequence. It means that you can sleep with whoever you feel like, great, but there are consequences because women are the ones who get pregnant and carry babies and give birth.
It's a very binary version of
yes,
sex.
because sex is binary, but please let me finish my point.
Oh, God.
It's tricking women into thinking that aborting a pregnancy, terminating a pregnancy is something to be celebrated, when in reality, for a lot of women, especially those who are doing it under duress, say that they've been raped or that, you know, in the small circumstances where something really traumatic has happened to them, that's a medical decision. Or say that they're miscarrying and then they have to, you know, have an assisted termination. That's a medical procedure. It's not a celebration of, oh, look at the.
The idea, the sort of like moral setting of that it needs to be rare is, I think the delineation between that's a medical abortion and that's like a fun abortion is really interesting because they're all medical. It's all a medical procedure. And so no matter what you're doing, going in there and getting it, like it's not like, oh, you're only allowed 2. It's just like, you should just be able to get a medical procedure done when it's something that you need done.
We shouldn't be desensitized to taking someone's life. That should never be an empowering factor for a woman.
I definitely agree in that, like, there should be no absolute thing any woman should do. There should not be an absolute response to incest or rape or any of these things. Every woman should have the choice. of if they want to or not want to carry that child, whether it is having fun, getting raped, incest, whatever it is.
I think there should be an absolute response to trauma like incest or rape. That response should be a psychological one. Whether that's a therapist, a family member, a friend, or law enforcement, the person should talk to someone. People respond incorrectly to trauma when they keep it all bottled up inside. It's difficult to talk about trauma, but it's the correct way to deal with it. When you bottle up trauma, it becomes very unhealthy for you. People think that ignoring something makes it go away, but that's wrong. When I was in the cult, I kept things bottled up for about 7 years, and it drove me to the point of near suicide. I didn't actually want to die, but my mind was twisted and unhealthy due to the 7 years of trauma from the cult, and that it was playing tricks on me. What had really happened to me was me mistaking wanting to die for a desperate need for hope. I wanted hope, but my unhealthy thoughts translated that into wanting to die. The cult taught me to bottle stuff up and put on a fake smile because they taught me to feel guilty and shameful for everything. So I get it. Guilt and shame and feeling like no one cares are often what people think after they've gone through trauma, which makes them think that they should bottle it up. I only started to heal when I started talking. I found a friend and talked to her and finally started to feel glimpses of healing. That guilt and shame eventually lifted itself and it went away. It wasn't easy and it took time, but it was worth it.
It is.
I don't glorify and glamorize abortion. I think it's a very traumatic thing. I doubt that if somebody has to do, like if they have to do it, they'll do it. I don't think that people are like, doing like have 6, get the 7th free and having fun with it. And I think that like glamorization and glorification of any side is not okay.
Did the Dobbs decision make anybody here sort of rethink abortion access, reproductive health care?
It's anti-woman, right? It's it does not center people to have that voice for themselves and their own decisions, right? It is a barrier, right?
It's
if we want to put it that way.
It's giving more agency to women because it's moving it back to the state level. So locally,
but why would the state have the ability to tell me what to do?
What is the disconnect here? When leftists talk about the Dobbs decision, they're always complaining that means that the state is going to tell them what to do. When we had Roe v. Wade, the federal was telling everyone what to do. What difference does it make if the federal is telling you what to do or if the state is telling you what to do? Of course, the leftists liked when the federal told everyone what to do because the federal was allowing abortion. Omaris makes it obvious that it's not that she actually cares if someone tells her what to do. She's actually mad that some states don't allow abortion. If Omaris knew that all states would allow abortion, she wouldn't be mad about the Dobbs decision. It is also interesting to me that leftists are so concerned about the Dobbs decision. I thought the leftists were confident that most Americans support abortion. Decisions going back to the states would mean Americans in each state would vote for people who supported certain policies. If most Americans support abortion, what is the left worried about? Wouldn't most of us just vote to uphold abortion in our own states? I wonder if leftists are actually not as confident as they say they are that most Americans support abortion. So this is why they're so concerned with states having the ability to make their own laws.
Because it does in multitudes
have
of
that
different
power.
areas. If you take out the viewpoint that life begins at conception, which is a really big defining principle for both the pro-life crowd, who very, very vehemently believe that, and then obviously a lot of the pro-choice crowd do not believe that. Taking that out of the equation, you do not have just whatever kind of autonomy you want as a person. It's regardless of male or female. You can't just have free run to do whatever the hell you want. That's not how society operates. So
at no point do I have the right to tell anyone in this room what they should or should not do with their bodies.
But it's not about your body.
It's not about me respecting a question here.
It's not about your body. It's about the kid's body. I don't care what you do with your body.
It's my body, right? We're talking about my body.
You're talking about.
Jordan, I saw your hand creep up.
The Dobbs decision for me reinforced how important it is that we approach these issues from a cultural perspective, because it reinforces something that I have told many of my colleagues and peers in the past, which is that so long as you lack a cultural consensus, any issue, any issue can become a political football that can be decided by another election cycle. And so long as there is no strong consensus, I would expect this to be our reality going forward, these extremely vitriolic and aggressive conversations until there's another miraculous consensus that brought about Roe v. Wade. But what it more or less reinforced for me is that we're going to have more of these difficult conversations.